Ladies and gents, welcome back. Rocco Yaps, and today we're going to be yapping about the showdown between WBC 140-pound champion Super Matias defending his belt against the mandatory challenger Dalton Smith, January 10th, tomorrow, Saturday. And we're going to be going from top to bottom from the very first fight all the way to the main event. And I'm going to be explaining to you who I think wins and why. So without further ado, let's get it going. We have a lot to go about. So the first fight of the night is going to be between Mario Bedola Orozco, who's currently sitting at 4 victories, 3 of them by knockout, 4 losses and 0 draws, facing off against Arhan Iseni with 4 victories, no losses, no draws, and all 4 victories coming by way of knockout. Now, just a little quick rundown on Orozco. What he has going down in his record is that he lost his very first fight. So his pro debut, he lost it. Uh, and it was also by KO. So, yeah, he got knocked out in his very first professional fight. But he is here now. And after that loss, he won 2. Then he lost 2 in a row. Then he won 2 in a row. And then he lost his last fight. Now he's more of a pressure slugger type of fighter. He's more of a come forward type of fighter. He's very limited in his fighting style, and that's it about his record. Now on the other hand, Iseni, all he really has is that he's been on a consistent win streak by knockout in his 4 first fights, and he's probably gonna try to keep that up in this 5th fight coming up. I don't see why not. Orozco doesn't seem very durable. He doesn't seem very tough or anything like that. So I don't see why he couldn't possibly do it. But Orozco has been all over the place with his weight as well. He fought at 160. Then he had a fight at 150. He fought twice at 152. Then he fought 3 times in a row at 147. And his last fight was at one. And his last fight was like around 175. While on the other hand, Isaini has always all 4 of his fight have been at the 175-pound limit. Now, Orozco seems like that type of fighter who is just like he can make a much lighter weight. It's just that he's probably not disciplined, as you can see by his body type. I'm not body shaming. Andy Ruiz is a clear example that looks doesn't really matter always, but you can see the clear difference that one guy is slimming himself down to the weight, and the other one really isn't at all. And but yeah, I have a 75% chance. Um, the only reasons I like maybe Is Iseni probably gets a little cocky and probably gets caught unexpectedly. I mean, the record shows that when he does win, when Orozco does win, it most of the time is by knockout. So I don't know if it's 25% of Isaini probably, getting cocky or getting lazy in there, or him not training his hardest or whatever. But 75% chance of him winning, and I do see it by knockout. It'll probably be around the 4th round. Um, but yeah, I have it by TKO. Now, second fight of the night will be again from Keith Cullen, who, similar to the previous, is an 8 fights only, but all 8 fights coming by way of knockout. So he has won all his fights by knockout, 0 loss, 0 draws. Facing off against Alberto Guevara, with 28 victories, 13 by knockout, 8 losses and 0 draws. Now, Colin doesn't have anything really in his record like names or accomplishments, but other than the impressive 100% knockout ratio, he also hasn't gone further than the 3rd round. And both the 2 times he did go to the 3rd round were his 2 last fights, which coincidentally, in my opinion, is when he had his quote unquote like 2 upscales in difficulty when it comes to his opponents. Nothing too crazy, like, but on average, from when you have a up and coming guy that you're moving around and he's knocking everybody out, they were pretty good decently step ups, but they didn't get past the third round. But that is the farthest he has ever gone, is the third round. Uh, but yeah, one of the guys who had like, for example, one of the guys was a 5-0 with 3 knockouts. That's a good record, especially when you're considering that when Colin fought him, he had like he had like 6 fights and 6 by knockout. So that's a pretty close fight, you know. And then the other guy had like 24 fights with 13 by KO, even though he had a shit ton of losses as well, like 18 losses and 10 of them by KO. But still, that's a big jump from a guy who only has like 7 fights. I'm I'm extremely trying to avoid saying 6-7 in this video. But yeah, but this guy Guevara, in my opinion, is no different in the sense of it's a guy with a lot of experience. Is a guy that shows that he could hit hard and pretty durable, and is here to test out these up and coming guys to see if they're worthy enough to be considered actual prospects. And yeah, but Guevara and his record, he lost his first fight in his 17th fight, so he went 16-0 before he lost his 17th fight, and it was actually for the IBF World Title at 118 pounds. Now, that was way back at 2012. Then he won the WBC International Silver at 118. Then he lost in his very next fight. Then he lost his WBO North American champ at 126. Then lost the WBC International feather. So, but the interesting thing about him is his opponent record. Now, like I have it here, Guevara, although is all over the place in terms of record and loss and all that, but his major losses were where it mattered the most, whether it was for a belt or opponent, were against pretty experienced and tough fighters. In the sense that when he fought all the way in 2012 for the IBF World Title at 118 pounds, was against Leo Santa Cruz when Leo Santa Cruz was in his prime, or was in his youthfulness, slightly before his prime. So that was a good fucking fighter to fight against. Um, then you also have he fought Shakur Stevenson at 126, and that's why he lost. And then also you have Shisuke Yamanaka. Great fights that he had. Yes, he lost them all. He lost important fights for belts and against important high-profile names, but he was still there. He has that experience of knowing what top level guys are. So that's why I have it a 60% favor for Colin. I think this is a clear example of trying to have your boy show that he's a respectable prospect and should be considered an actual prospect by feeding him this kind of quote unquote tough journeyman like Guevara. But 60% of Colin because, Guevara is a good test. I mean, his track record shows. He has Leo Santa Cruz, Shakur Stevenson, Yamanaka, and just the experience of gaining when you fight people like that in the ring. I think is actually really priceless and could actually be considered both factor. But I see it as a unanimous decision victory for Colin. And if there is going to be a stoppage, it'll be late, around 7th to 8th round. This is an 8th round bout. And I don't see a game past that. Third fight of the night, ladies and gentlemen, we have Nestor Bravo sitting at 23 victories, 16 by KO, 1 loss, and 0 draws, facing off against Pedro Campa, who's sitting at 37 victories, 25 by via knockout, 4 losses, and 1 draw. Now, here we have Bravo, who his record in the 16th fight, he had 15 consecutive victories. Then in his 16th fight, he fought for the WBC Latino champ belt at 135 pounds. 5 defense later, he fought for the WBO NABO championship belt at 140 pounds. Has been at 140 pounds ever since winning that belt. And his last fight was his first loss ever in his career. So he is coming back from a loss which is the first loss in his whole career. So he was 23-0 before becoming 23-1. Now, in the other corner, we have Gampa, who is currently in his record having lost his first fight at his first fight that he lost was his 28th. So he went 27 fights undefeated before the 28th when he lost it. 3 fights later, 3 wins basically later, he got his first draw, which you see in his record is his only draw. Then 4 fights later, he loses the NABF and WBO International at 140. So he tried competing for those 2 belts, and then he lost. So he built his way up to challenge the NABF and WBO International champ at 140 pounds, and then he lost that. 3 fights later, he loses again, trying to go for the WBO NABO championship belt. Then he won his last fight, you know. But that belt, the WBO NABO belt, was against Teofimo Lopez. Now, I'm pretty sure if you know boxing, you guys know who Teofimo Lopez is, especially with his up and coming bout against Shakur Stevenson this month. But basically, Teofimo had gotten popularity in his fandom at 135 pounds. But then, when after the defeat against Cambosis, he decided to move up, and Pedro Campa was his very first matchup at 140 pounds, which he did defeat by late stoppage in the 7th round in a 10-round bout, which, you could credit that to the state of mind of Lopez plus him going up to a whole new weight category. But Campo did look good. Campa, did have some good moments in there where he did look good. He was pretty solid. But at the end of the day, like I said, you can take that away from him by saying, well, Teofimo was going at a new weight, and Teofimo was coming out of one of the most humiliating fights that somebody of his magnitude could lose. An easy fight that he was supposed to blow over this mandatory challenger. So I get it. You could take credit away from Campa in that regard, but Campa did look good against Teofimo Lopez when Teofimo went up to 140. Now, Campa has fallen short. Yes, as I read in the record wise, he has fallen short of every big fight and every major fight in his career. But he has looked good in those moments, like I said earlier. Bravo, on the other hand, has not been tested yet, but has a good record and accomplishments. But the only thing that's drawing me back is that his last fight, which he lost, like I said earlier, his first loss in his career was his very last fight that he had, was against a not good fighter at all. Like, in my opinion, he was. It was a pretty okay, like, leaning towards bad fighter. So I don't know. It's just maybe it was just a one off, but that's why I have it a 60% chance for Campa. But I think it is very close, especially with the power that these two guys carry. I think both of them have, especially Campa has shown he could take pretty good punches. Bravo, he hasn't shown, just the quality of opposition. But I think, both of these guys is decency and chin, and both of the guys having very solid punching output can really make an entertaining fight. But I have it by like a split decision for Campa. But if there is going to be a stoppage, is around the 8th or 10th round. But like I say right here, but Bravo can do the same. I wouldn't be surprised if Bravo does the exact same thing. I think Campa is going to do tonight. So 60% chance for Campa to become victorious. Now we have the 4th fight of the night between Cintron and Sandoval. More specifically, Javier Cintron with 13 victories, 6 of them by KO, 1 loss and 0 draws, facing off against Victor Efrain Sandoval. 38 victories, 24 by knockout, 5 losses and 0 draws. Now, in this guy's record, we have that Cintron in his 6th fight, he had 5 victories in a row. And his 6th one, he fought for the WBO Youth at 118 pounds. Then he went down to 115 his very next fight and won the WBO Latino belt. 4 defenses later, um, he was victorious in 4 defenses. Then he lost the 15th defense of that belt. Proceeds to go up after that defeat to 118. Had a win there, and then challenged the WBO International Champ and beat him and became the WBO International Champ. And that was his last fight. So he is coming off a victory. He's coming off of winning a belt as well, although not super high level, but it is a belt that has status and that is one of the sanctioning bodies. And that was his last fight. On the other corner, we have Sandoval, who had 36 fights before he fought for the WBC Youth at 118 pounds. His next fight, he won the WBC International Silver at 115 pounds. Then he stayed at 115 for 2 more fights. Then he went down to 112, won a fight, then lost the next fight. Then the third fight, he lost it again when he was challenging the WBC Continental Americas champion, who also was the WBO International. Then he decides, I'm going to go all the way up to 122, where he won his fight there, and then decided to go down to 118 to challenge Javier Cintron. So, yeah, this guy, Rodriguez, has been all over the place in terms of weight. He hasn't chosen a specific weight that he wants to stick around. But Rodriguez versus Cintron was what you guys have to know is that this is a late replacement. Sandoval wasn't the original opponent for Cintron. A guy named Rodriguez was Cintron's original opponent, but couldn't obtain a visa for the fight. So they had no other choice but to cancel him out of the fight and try to get a late replacement for Cintron, which Sandoval and his team agreed that they would be the late replacement. Now, this is tough and competitive, but in a weird way, I have Sandoval winning 60-40 just because he hits really hard and he could take a punch. And, Javier Cintron doesn't really know what it's like to be pressured, like really take your punch and pressure you and suffocate you with power behind my punches. But at the same time, like, I don't know, maybe Cintron could just outbox him. So I think this one is the one I'm going to get wrong, but I'm still going to stay with my initial thoughts of Cintron losing this fight to Sandoval. But if Sandoval wins, it's kind of weird because, like, I don't see Sandoval going the distance, like, beating by points. I see him winning around the 7th to 10th round by late stoppage. It would surprise me that he wins by points. But if it does go to the points, I think it is Cintron that wins. But I will stick to my guns and my initial thoughts. I'm not changing. Sandoval, I have him 60-40. Now we have the co-main of the night. Emmanuel Rodriguez had 22 victories, 13 by knockout, 3 losses, 0 draws, facing off against Fernando Diaz, sitting at 16 victories, 6 by KO, 6 losses, 1 draw. Classic Mexico versus Puerto Rico fight. But unfortunately, for me as a Mexican, I don't see Fernando Diaz winning this fight. Now, here's a little why. We have Rodriguez's 10th fight was for the WBO Latino 118-pound belt. Now, he did win that, proceed to have 7 winning title defenses. Then he proceeded to go up to 122 for the IBF World title, wins that, has 1 title defense where he lost by KO against Inoue. I'm pretty sure you guys know or have seen at least that KO. It's during the Muhammad Ali tournament thing that they were having in the UK with many different fighters from many different categories of weight. And he's the one that the famous clip where he's on his knees and blood's dripping down his nose and one eye's closed and he's looking at his team and he's nodding his head no, but he didn't get up in time and he lost by 2nd round stoppage. That is our boy Fernando Diaz. Emmanuel Rodriguez, my bad. But yeah, he won the IBF World Title at 122 and then lost it the very next fight against Inoue. Then he proceeded to lose the very next fight after that Inoue fight, which was for the WBC interim belt at 118 pounds. So he went down to 118 after his loss against Inoue, tried becoming the WBC interim champ, lost that fight, then had two win fights later, and then goes and becomes the IBF world champion at 118 pounds and lost it in his next fight. So his first title defense of that belt, he lost it, and that also happens to be his very last fight before this one. Now, in the other corner, we have Diaz, who at his 13th fight, he fought for WBC USA champ at 112 pounds, which he won, proceeds to go up to 115, and he challenges the NABF champ, where he loses, goes back down to 112, challenges the WBC Youth Silver champion, loses, decides to go back up to 115. This time actually wins a belt, which was the Mexican Pacific Coast champ. Loses his first fight at 118 pounds after he becomes the Mexican Pacific Coast champ. Goes up to 118, loses it, and now we're here yet again at 118. So, yeah, this to me just seems very obvious. Diaz hasn't done nor fought anyone to make me feel like he could have a chance of winning this. Rodriguez did lose his last fight, which was a world title fight, but in typical fashion, he's getting an easy comeback fight, which is like, this is what this fight seems to me. It seems like an obvious comeback fight for Rodriguez to come look good and try to call out a good name of the division and hopefully try to get back in there and secure a world title fight or secure a big fight with any of the guys at 118, especially since two of those belts are now vacant because, well, they're not vacant anymore, but they're freshly in the positions of new champions, and those champions need good title defenses because, the IBF and WBC champion at 118 pounds before he decided to move up to 122 was Nakatani. So Nakatani did have those two belts left, and they have already new champions, but those new champions need fights that are worthy of title defending. And Rodriguez is that guy that could be one of those guys, but he just has to have at least this victory and probably get one of those fights. But that's why I have a 75% TKO victory for Rodriguez around the 5th to 7th round. And if it does go the distance, I would be kind of shocked. He would have to really dominate and dance around and shit like that for it to go the distance and me be impressed. But realistically, I don't think Fernando Diaz should withstand more than 7 to 9 rounds with Manny Rodriguez. But I do have it a 75% TKO victory, so like a stoppage around the 5th to 7th round. Now, this, I did want to mention it because I was actually very interested in this fight. I was actually pretty excited about this fight. This was against Alfredo Santiago facing off against Henry Cendillo, which Cendillo was the Intercontinental WBO champ, while Santiago was the North American Boxing champ for the WBO. So these were both WBO members. Obviously, the Intercontinental champ is more, but that was good. That was good. It's at the lightweight, so it's 135 pounds, which right now the 135 pounds is looking kind of dead, with Shakur leaving, Keyshawn leaving, Davis retiring, stuff like that. It's looking like it needs a lot more hype around it, and in order to get that, you need these new up-and-coming guys for these belts. So this was a good fight, and I was pretty excited, but it got canceled due to Cedeno not medically being charged or cleared yet to fight January 10th. Who knows why? I'm not his fucking doctor. I'm not his part of his team, but this was going to be a good fucking showdown, and I was actually pretty excited. Fortunately, it's not happening. But with that being said, we have the co-main event between WBC 140-pound champion Subrael Matias with 23 victories, 22 via knockout, 2 losses, 0 draws, fighting off, defending that belt for the first time against mandatory challenger Dalton Smith. 18 victories, 13 by knockout, 0 losses, 0 draws. So here's the thing, Matias, first loss was his 16th fight. So he went 15 fights consecutively winning by knockout. 16th guy withstands his punch and boxes him to a decision. 2 knockout wins later, he fights the same guy that beat him and took his undefeated record and knocks that motherfucker out. Then he proceeds to fight and win the very next fight after avenging his loss. He proceeds to fight for the IBF World title at 140 pounds, which he did win by knockout. Has a successful title defense where he wins by knockout. But then he faces in his second title defense against Liam Paro, where Paro basically just withstands his punch and outboxes him for all 12 rounds and takes the belt away from him. Then he proceeds to Matias has comeback fights, 2 fights where he wins by knockout both times. Then he goes to Puello, where Puello was defending his WBC 140-pound championship title, but loses it via very close decision in the same night that Hamza Shiraz and Berlanga fought the Ring 3. There you go, that's the event. So he fights against Puello in the Ring 3, wins his very first fight by decision. That was the first time he ever won to the scorecards and won the scorecards. The 2 times he have gone to the scorecards in his whole career, he had lost. So that was pretty funny. In the other corner, we have Smith, who in his 8th fight, all victories, of course, 7 victories, but then in his 8th fight, he became the British champion at 140 pounds. 2 fights later, he collects the WBC International Silver to his resume. 4 defenses later of those 2 belts, he then gains the Commonwealth Championship belt, so he has 3 belts to his name. The very next fight after the Commonwealth Championship, he becomes and collects the WBC Silver Champ, so now he has 4 belts under where he's defending. Then his next fight, he becomes the European EBU champion, so he has 5 belts. And then he proceeded to defend those titles against a guy named Germani or something like that, I believe, where he did dominate. But Germani wasn't at the guy at the level. But now we are here. Look, Matias has shown he could take a lot of punishment while Dalton hasn't really yet. And as of right now, Dalton really hasn't fought anybody who pushes him back in the sense of like, I could take anything you throw at me and anything I throw at you is really hurting you. Which is what's going to happen with Matias, because in my opinion, Matias has shown he could take a punch. More specifically because that is Matias' style of fighting. Matias loves to walk around with the high guard, try to land a couple punches here and there, but he walks you down, walking straight at you with this high guard, letting you throw and exhaust yourself for 2 to 3 rounds, those first 2-3 rounds, before he starts implementing some pressure with punches, not just walking straight forward and maybe catching you here and there. No, he's going there with actual pressure combinations and stuff. And unfortunately, Dalton does like to start fast. He starts fast from the very first round. He's already in there. So this could play in favor to Matias. Smith gets tired, gets caught with very rare few punches in those first 2-3 rounds. They kind of help tire him more. And then Matias starts slowly, investing more in hurting him with punches that actually land. Even if they're blocked in the arms, Matias has shown to have the power where anywhere I hit you, it's going to really sting and hurt and annoy you, even if it's in your arms and your shoulders or in your forearms. So, but Dalton does counter very good. I just don't think he has it in him, and he's never fought like this for me to show me this, that he could stick and move, counter all the time, and then successfully be able to choose when and where to plant his feet, and and just stay in the pocket with him and fight him off him. Like, Matias is a one-dimensional fighter, but he is so relentless and hits so hard, and he takes a punch so well that you can't just stick and move with him. There's going to be moments where you're going to have to fight him, and that's where a lot of people fail. Pollo was trying to stick and move with Matias, and it was working, but they got to a point where around the fifth, sixth round, it started going in favor of Matias because it started wearing him down. How much energy he was losing, but also the punches that were slipping through and landing were really hurting him. So that's what I mean. Smith is going to have to stick and move, try to get hit as less as possible, and those punches that do get to him, try to absorb them as best as he can. Smith hasn't shown me that though, and Matias, in the other hand, has shown me to be able to do that against fighters and take their punishment and not get wobbled or anything. So that's why I have it as still a very close fight. It's probably realistically more of a 55-45, but just to be, you know, a lot simpler, I have it as 60% victory for Matias by decision. I don't know. I don't know if he could probably catch. I think the same thing that happened to Pollo is gonna happen to Smith, but probably he's gonna be a little bit more sloppier than Pollo. I think Smith is probably gonna have to be a little bit more sloppier. He doesn't have the same experience as Pollo, so that's why I think it'll probably be a decision. But if there is to be a stoppage by Matias, I see it around the ninth or 12th, and it'll probably be by exhaustion. Like, I'm talking about that fool Smith can't even fucking pick up his hands anymore. That fool is like, he's like, damn, like just running 2 steps is already fucking tiring me. My legs hurt, my arms feel heavy. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So thank you very much, guys. That is my predictions for tomorrow's fight. I hope you guys watch it tomorrow. That way, you guys, get firsthand whether I was right or not, and then come back Sunday for my follow-up video, seeing how good or bad I did in my predictions, and you guys could, keep me in check and keep me, you know, where I don't lie. I never do, but you guys have the evidence right there. And then also in that video, I will be talking about what I think the winners should do and who the winners should face moving forward in their careers. Ladies and gents, I've yapped long enough. Thank you very much for clicking on this video. Thank you for taking time out of your day to watch the video. If you're new or you haven't yet, please hit subscribe. It really helps out. I'm really trying to grow the channel, and best way is to subscribe and take us out there to new people. Like the video, check out my other stuff, and stay tuned for stuff in the future. Thank you very much. Have a good one. God bless.